Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for taking time out of your busy days to join us for what should be a very informative and eye-opening session. I'm Nicole Gabrick. I'm from ENSafrica. I'm joined by my colleague, Ridwan Boda. And then we're very warm welcome to David and to Yaron. Yaron's from Digital Resilience and David's from Bosaron Security, who are going to be much more exciting than us lawyers today to give you more of a practical overview into how we secure ourselves in this new age. I'm sure we're all very well aware by now that the POPIA doomsday clock has counted down to 0 on the 1st of July, and we're now in a POPIA live world. I'm sure we're also well aware of the number of cybersecurity incidences that are on the rise every day. In our own backyards in the last few days, we've seen Transnet severely affected by what seems to be a major cyber attack. We've seen a number of overseas organizations, even EA Games, being hacked. So certainly we're well aware that there's a whole range of things happening all the time. And we've got this new dimension of POPIA coming into play as of the 1st of July, which puts new sorts of legal obligations and nuances onto us. And Ridwan, I think maybe I should turn to you at this stage just to get your thoughts about what the Act imposes on us.
Thanks, Nicole. So I think without regurgitating the Act and without going into a very verbatim, boring explanation of what each section of the Act says about security safeguards, for those of you who are interested, I'm speaking from Section 19 onwards, what the Act starts off with, it places duties on the responsible party. And the wording which the Act uses, it says the responsible party must. So it denotes that the responsible party doesn't have a discretion in this regard. It's not a duty imposed on anybody else. It's on the responsible party themselves. So it's not users must or operators must. It's the responsible party must. And what is the requirement on the responsible party? For this part, I will regurgitate the Act. It says must secure the integrity and confidentiality of personal information in its possession and control by taking appropriate, reasonable, and technical and organizational measures to prevent, and then the Act goes on. So when we unpack this and when we look at what actually does the Act require of responsible parties, I think the starting point is what do we mean by reasonable? Reasonableness, as one court quipped, or one judge quipped, he says reasonableness is in the eye of the beholder. So much like beauty is reasonableness, it means different things to different people. What one person may think is reasonable may not be reasonable to the next person. However, if you go on further to the latter part of Section 19, it does require organizations to actually be cognizant of the industry in which they are in. What are the generally accepted security measures being taken within the industry? And that's the standard by which most organizations will be judged. So if you, for example, are a payment service provider, the standard on you is going to be much higher than, say, just a small NGO who may just be collecting information about donors and recipients of information and the like. So the standards would differ differing from one industry to the other. When we look at what the Act then says, or what the Act says about reasonable technical measures and organizational measures. So there's two parts. When we speak about technical, we speak more about the IT systems themselves. So what measures can we put in place to actually protect the IT systems? When we speak about organizational measures on the other end, we're speaking about the environment around the IT system. And more particularly, we're speaking about the people who interface with that system. You'll often hear the saying, but people are the weakest link in cybersecurity. And if organizations can have the best security in the world, but if your people aren't trained, if your people aren't equipped to deal with or alert to the fact that there are things like phishing attacks and the like, you're going to be falling short of what the Act requires of you. From a technical and from an organizational perspective, most organizations who we speak to find it difficult to understand what do they actually need to do. I don't think it's anything more than what organizations should be doing as part of their normal cybersecurity protocol. So POPIA is a very technology neutral legislation, does not insist that you use any specific type of technology, does not insist that you embrace certain types of products, but it does require you to be cognizant, as I mentioned, of the type of industry in which you operate in. At a very high level, looking at more or less what should be addressed as part of your security and your technological and organizational measures. We break it down generally into 4 components. Number 1, access. So how is access to your systems control and to your environment control? Number 2, we look at the full data lifecycle management. So from the time of collection of data to the time of purging data, the entire lifecycle needs to be looked at. And at every level, there needs to be an interrogation of what is happening to our personal information. How is it secure? Who has access to it? How is it being, or is it safe enough? And not just safe from hacking and unauthorized disclosure, also safe from data being corrupted, data being lost in the system, or data being merged with other data sets and simply being confused. So we look at, that's the second part of our interrogation level. The third part, which we look at, is who has or data subject participation rights. So when POPIA imposes an obligation on responsible parties to actually give data subjects certain rights, including the right to access, request access to information, deletion of information, correction of information as well. And when we are looking at data subject access rights, we often need to ensure that our IT systems are geared up to so that when we do encounter PIA requests or requests made for a PIA data subject, we are actually able to give effect to that request, and that our systems are geared enough to give effect to that request. We found, for example, one client, their systems were so secure that if there ever was a data subject request being made, that data subject request could never be fulfilled simply because the systems are too secure. So often there's this trade-off between privacy on the one end and security on the other end. And I think one of the biggest forgotten factors in data privacy secure or data security is this aspect of data subject access rights. And then the last component which we look at as part of our interrogation is data exchanges. So data sharing, what measures need to be put in place. And in those areas, it could be both technical measures and, as we mentioned, organizational measures. So not only are you required to ensure that, for example, your data is secure when it's being shared from one party to the other, there's proper protocols in place, the right people are getting access to the data. But before that, there needs to be some form of understanding as to why are we sharing this data. And that's where the Act introduces this concept of an operator or an operator agreement. And quite interestingly, the wording used in section 20 doesn't only extend to operators, actually extends to any, and I'll just read the word again, sorry, bear with me a second. He said I'm not going to regurgitate the Act, but today, unfortunately, for this specific part, I will. It says an operator, a responsible party must ensure that the operator which processes personal information, establishes and maintains security measures. But it also says an operator or anyone processing personal information on behalf of a party or an operator must. So the obligation is wider than just the responsible party in that regard when we're looking at technical and organizational measures. That then goes on to give you certain, commonly or certain security protocols which need to be employed. I'm not going to go too much into those, but those are things like identifying risks, assessing your risks, regularly testing your risks, updating your risks as your security needs change and the like. So that's a starting point for privacy and cybersecurity. And those are preventative measures which organizations would need to take in order for organizations actually to ensure that not only are they POPIA compliant, but more importantly, that they're taking cybersecurity seriously. And later on in the presentation, our colleagues will actually speak to you more about some of the more practical measures that companies should adopt, some of the technological interventions and other interventions which can be used to actually assist companies in this regard. Nicole, then we turn to, okay, we've put in place all of our security. We've put in place all of our mechanisms. We're happy we've conducted our risk assessments. But what happens when things go wrong? What happens when there's a security compromise? How do organizations actually deal with that? And I'll hand over to you to actually go through that in more detail.
So importantly, just to sort of talk back to what you were saying before I move on to incident response is Section 19 of the Act is quite wide, and it imposes on duties on us in actually taking measures proactively to identify where we have these risks, as well as to regularly verify it. And that's where David and Jeroen's insight is going to be so interesting, to see how we can go about identifying risks and mitigating these sorts of risks. But fundamental to wrapping it all up, both in terms of identifying risk all the way through to managing risk, is an incident response plan. Whether you put that into a policy and you write it out like us lawyers love to do, or you have some sort of practical implementation, it doesn't matter. But there are some key elements that you want to be focusing on in your incident response plan. In fact, incident response plans are so important. The White House in the US recently released a guide to dealing with cybersecurity events. And one of the tips they said is have an incident response plan and test it regularly, because that incident response plan will talk to where the risks are before an event happens. So for example, can you manage without certain types of your business or areas of your business if that went down and they weren't functioning? What will that mean for you? So what do we want to see in an incident response plan that's going to be key and critical for your organization? The first thing we need to know is you need to have an incident response team. Who is going to be part of that team? Assemble the role players. You want somebody from everywhere in the organization, a handful of people, that if anything goes wrong, they come together and they know what to do. Then you have to have evaluated the risks. So what are our risks to the business? Where are our biggest challenges? What happens if a certain data set is compromised? That risk evaluation is not only a POPI compliant thing to do, but it also will help you in establishing how to mitigate that in terms of your operational and organizational and technological measures. Then what are your containment measures? What do we do? Who does what? Actually, the day-to-day running of things becomes so important. Then your remediation steps coupled with that, and then actually knowing what your notification obligations are under POPI, or wherever you are in the world, there may be multiple jurisdictions that trigger reporting obligations. Those are also important. All those things tie together, and then it's about practice, 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 and educate your staff. Educate your organization. Take it to them. Say, we're doing dry runs. We, simulate phishing attempts. Do whatever it is you need to do to make people aware, because as you say, Ridwan, people are our weakest link. And I think maybe this is a good juncture for us to hand over to David and to Jeroen for them to talk us through a few of the practicalities and their tips and insights and run us through some things. And then we'll circle back in the end and wrap it all together and deal with some questions if we've got some time. So over to you, David, over to you, Jeroen.
Thank you, Nicole. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Okay, great. Wonderful. So thank you so much for the opportunity. And I would just like to maybe quick introduction to the issues that were raised around the human firewall, right? I mean, at the end of the day, from a technology perspective, we can do the best that we can. We can design processes, we can design legal, but if we don't get the right awareness with the employees within an organization, then we will have, a potential risk, and potentially they'll do the wrong things. So we always talk about the balance between people, process, and technology. So maybe a little bit of background before I introduce David and get into Boseron around DSG. I'll quickly just share my screen. We started Digital Resilience as a cybersecurity company in the early part of 2018, but actually we're part of a group called Digital Solution Group that we started in 1998, close to 23 years ago.
Jeroen, there seems to be a little bit of a lag on your side. Maybe if you just pop your video off, it'll be easier for us to sort of reconnect to you. Just give it a second, and while Jeroen's system just reloads. It'll certainly be interesting to see what comes up. I mean, Ridwan, there we go, Jeroen, are you back with us?
I am, I'm sorry.
There we go.
To have unstable internet, apologies.
Yeah, maybe just pop your video off and then should help you a little bit.
Hello?
Yeah, I mean, it's coming and going. It's a little bit patchy, but there we go. Let's see if it works without the video.
Apologies about this, Nicole.
There we go. We can hear you loud and clear now.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. It seems like my internet has taken a bit of a slide. So apologies for that. These things happen, the worldwide wait. Hopefully you can hear me okay. So seeing that we lost a little bit of time, I won't get into the whole introduction of Digital Solutions Group. I wanted to talk a little bit about digital resilience and our strategic partners. I'm going to be spending quite a bit of time today talking with Bo Saran, with David Dion, who's joining us from Canada early in the morning. Thank you, David, for joining us. Bo Saran really focuses on employee awareness, which is exactly what we're going to be talking about today. And some really interesting aspects. As a group, we also SciDef, which is another Canadian company that we represent exclusively in Africa that does managed services in the space. We also do technical training with CyberBit, and we represent WMC Global, which is a company that looks specifically at phishing and dealing with phishing at network level. So we work very closely with the operators in Africa and the financial services companies and banks to help dealing with phishing at source, which is obviously something that's growing dramatically. And David Dion will discuss a little bit of today, and we'll show you some examples on how we could simulate phishing using the Bo Saran platform. And WMC Global is actually a solution that deals directly with phishing at source. We also represent Komodo Cybersecurity, which offers a variety of solutions for perimeter security, for your antivirus, security information event management system as a service. And we then represent LogMeIn, which has called LastPass, used by most IT managers, very powerful to manage. 70% of incidents actually are simulated from bad password management. So I might use the same password on LinkedIn that I used to log onto the corporate network because I don't want to remember too many passwords. When LinkedIn gets hacked, which happened multiple times over the years, my password is exposed, and that's how vulnerabilities are actually initiated. And lastly, with the huge trend of working from home, we represent a solution from Ardetto, which is a multi-choice company. They designed the digital rights management and decoders that you probably have at home, and they've got a solution called Trusted Home. So we offer a solution on top of a router that allows you to manage your security at the home, which has become where we're all working these days with the pandemic and everything else that's going on. Great. I just wanted to check that you can still hear me okay. David, can you hear me?
Working.
Excellent. Wonderful. So David, I just wanted to maybe jump into you and straight into Bo Saran and discuss, where the company started, maybe give a bit of background. Why did you get into cybersecurity? Could you maybe give us some background?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Pleasure to join everyone in South Africa. I guess this morning for me is afternoon for you guys. So Bo Saran Security began in 2015 with a group of cybersecurity experts led by our CEO, David Shipley. They were responsible for protecting the University of New Brunswick here in Canada. And they wanted to try a new approach to not only measuring, but also managing and monitoring cyber risk as a whole. So at their roles at the university, which is one of North America's oldest English language public universities here in Canada, they had to balance the competing priorities within the university. Security is obviously a highly challenging environment in a university with regards to staff, faculty, and students. And being a university, they're constantly also under siege. So kind of working together, they're able to improve the organization's cyber awareness and kind of implement a comprehensive overhaul with regards to the technology architecture, which is now called Bo Saran, and with regards to empowering individuals within the organization to make better decisions at an individual level, but also at an organizational level with regards to reducing cyber risk. That's kind of how Bo Saran got its start.
Excellent. Thank you, David. That's awesome. And this whole issue around human firewall that I mentioned, and getting better security awareness. Obviously, the cybersecurity industry is moving so fast. There's just so many new things that are happening. How do we keep up? How do we make sure that our employees can keep up? And you know, how does BOSARON address the security awareness challenge?
Perfect. So I guess first I'll kind of cover with regards to security awareness at an individual level is really the attitude and the knowledge that someone holds about the risks to the physical information and assets with regards to the information and how to mitigate those risks. So security awareness training can help educate and train employees and everyone within the organization to understand the importance to those risks and the role that they play in protecting the information and assets of the organization. As everyone has a role to play. It's not just the IT team anymore. And awareness training isn't just an end to a means in itself, but it needs to be a continuous feedback loop between the individuals and the organization on both identifying and discouraging risky behaviors and recognizing and promoting good cyber behaviors, kind of changing the narrative around cybersecurity. As in the past, we always talked about the negative, but we need to start talking about the good things about cybersecurity and how well we're doing, not just the incidents that occur. So kind of taking from US's National Institute for Standards and Technology, known as NIST, kind of they point out security awareness efforts are designed to change behavior or reinforce good cybersecurity practices. Basically, in other words, security awareness training is just a first step towards changing individual behaviors and building a culture within the organization of security by empowering our employees. So security awareness is basically a continuous effort that aims to instill a security culture, empowering our people to be in control of the technology and not connect technology in control of us.
Awesome. So in the context of POPIA, the Protection of Personal Information Act, which is very similar to GDPR in Europe and California Act in North America, how do you manage the human risk or the errors that may come up? Knowing that Verizon, for example, had a data breach report that still shows that 93% of malicious breaches still start from social engineering, like I mentioned, with LinkedIn and being able to, find the right password of an individual and manage to get into the corporate network that way.
Yeah, it's with regards to our end users and the malicious breaches still being 93% at social engineering, i.e. those phishing clicks. It's easy to kind of fall into a trap of blaming users for falling victim to phishes, breaking a policy, or storing information in personal cloud sites instead of business cloud sites, or any other numbers of mishaps or mistakes. But by empowering our people to understand cyber risks and how their decisions can have a massive positive or negative impact on the organization, you can create a culture of security that will kind of complement the technology side of things that you've put in place. So security awareness alone can't replace the need for core security tools, but these tools can kind of can't replace the need for awareness programs either. So one of the ways BOSARON kind of helps with regards, or can help with regards to kind of empowering users to kind of know the role that they play. And I will share my screen now, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
With regards to just kind of covering how we engage users within the organization. So hopefully everybody can see my screen. It says, "Welcome back, David Dion."
Yeah, we can see it.
Perfect. What you see here is an end user dashboard of our platform. And when users get added to this platform, you can take advantage of kind of an out of the box kind of approach where users get welcomed to the platform. They'll be assigned, a customized workflow that can include surveys to get a better understanding of the user's behaviors and awareness with regards to cybersecurity. So do they know if their organization is a threat to cybercrime. Do they even know what phishing means? How do they manage their passwords? Just some basic behaviors and awareness and perceptions around the end users that feedback obviously also into the platform. When this approach is done, it can be followed by educational courses within the platform with regards to, as you can see here, Cyber 101 through 104. So the world of cybercrime, a better understanding of cybercrime within the world, hacking humans, so a better understanding of social engineering, a high-level overview of malware, and how to secure yourself. One of the biggest things we've learned over time is that the more apt people are to be secure personally at home with family and friends, the more apt they are to be secure at work as well. So kind of taking that educational approach of helping employees be safe, not only at work, but at home as well. And users can see, and how we can engage with them is obviously, yes, we can send them phishing simulations. So imitating real world attacks, for instance here, creating a new password, but by engaging with them and teaching them how to report these phishes properly, they can be rewarded in lowering their risk score so they can see quickly how well they're doing, and with regards to their personal information, their work information, even how if their personal emails have been exposed, and kind of getting a better understanding of the risk associated within the organization, and also identifying how to be able to lower that risk. And obviously another part of that too is engaging our users with regards to making it a part of the culture. You can kind of go a little bit further and gamifying it a little bit with regards to badges for completing specific tasks, with regards to education and reporting phishes, and even seeing how they're doing within the organization, creating a little bit of that competition and need to always want to be at the top. I know an organization that we work with, they have an ongoing competition of whoever has the highest score or a higher score than the CEO, kind of their name goes into a draw. Kind of thing. So kind of creating that engagement and bringing cybersecurity to the forefront of the organization, and knowing that everybody kind of has that role to play. And kind of what was said earlier of people, it is true, people can be our greatest weakness, but we can actually flip that by empowering them and bringing cybersecurity to the forefront and make them our strongest asset.
Excellent. And I wanted to just ask you about NIST framework and ISO, and frameworks that look at people, process, and technology. We've seen how employees can easily be taught and trained, but maybe you could highlight some of the frameworks that we support and that are used in the industry.
Yeah. So I guess at a high level, surveying communities, your community or your organization, kind of before starting awareness efforts is a best practice, supported obviously by the experts and researchers. But developing surveys and assessments and picking the right questions and reviewing those results is far easier said than done. So we kind of try to mend and kind of offer, don't reinvent the wheel when you can use pre-established templates or pre-built surveys already available to you to get a better understanding of where your risks are. So one of the ways Bowstrong can assist with that is, I'm just going to close this, is within the tool, there are pre-built assessments. And as you saw earlier, those end user surveys, but there are additional assessments that the management team can use. And by answering those questions in the assessments that are actually mapped to the NIST framework, it can help provide you with kind of a security roadmap per se on where the risks lie within the organization, even providing you with a top top 5 risks based on those responses that you've provided. So i.e. letting the technology tell us kind of where we're at based on our own responses. And even breaking those responses down further into, our categories of culture, people, process, and technology. And as you can see, even kind of going a little bit further into people risks based on those questions that I showed earlier, if all of our users state that they reuse their passwords, this could actually show up as a high risk, as reusing passwords. Obviously, if one account is breached, then they'll be able to breach several others. So the system can help provide you with recommendations on how to lower those risks overall. And also, with regards to seeing where the organization is at a whole with regards to how people are responding to the surveys, where the IT team is and where the executive team is with regards to seeing where and kind of finding out with kind of in the middle of where the reality is and where we are based on the actual answers to those surveys.
Brilliant. And in terms of phishing, I alluded to it earlier as a growing concern, and I think the number of phishing incidents has doubled since the pandemic. Could you maybe show how we can do phishing simulations and teach employees of what a phishing attack looks like? Because obviously, when you get it, you never know what it's like, right? So it'll be great if you could maybe show some phishing simulation.
Yes. So using the tool, we can imitate a lot of different types of phishing simulations, and you can actually even customize them to meet company and cultural needs within the platform. There's already pre-built templates. I have one here available, just kind of so you can see what a typical one looks like. This particular one is a credentials stealing type of phish. So as you can see, this is what it would look like in their inbox, kind of a generic email, but asking them to log in, to change their password, very popular style type phish. But the way our system is set up is where this is a credential stealing one. If they click on any of the links, it first goes to an item that looks like a Google sign-in, and when they would enter something and then hit the next button, they arrive at a landing page that lets the end user know that, for instance, if I go just Dion or enter anything, oh, it's not letting me. Wonderfuls of recording technology, but you arrive at a landing page letting the end user know that unfortunately they fell victim to a phishing simulation, but it's okay. This is a testing opportunity, learning opportunity. Here's how to better identify a phish the next time. But the platform also knows that when end users click on something and they arrive at a page that they're not expecting, they're normally pretty quick to close the window as there's a little bit of fear there, and as they've done something wrong. But the system kind of recognizes that and also automatically assigns them a training to basically better identify a phish the next time. And kind of taking that empowering piece is that on their dashboard, they'll see that they received an incident, their risk score has gone up. However, by completing the education, the risk score can go back down. And even if they do it in a timely manner and score really well on the quiz at the end, they can actually end up with a better score than they did before they clicked on a phishing simulation. As we really kind of take pride in knowing the fact that an end user, if they've made a mistake, have now bettered themselves by completing kind of that education piece. Kind of furthermore to the simulation sides of things, just to kind of get a little bit of understanding. Obviously, there's levels of difficulty in the platform, but you can also determine which emotions as that are being evoked by the end user, by that phish, that are causing the click, which is also mapped to basically the NIST framework as well with regards to emotional stressors with regards to phishing simulation and kind of better understanding those. And by knowing which types of fish our users are clicking on, we can adjust our training for the organization to meet those needs.
Brilliant. And back to the employees and employee awareness, apart from phishing simulation, what are other ways employees and organizations can increase their awareness with the Post Around platform?
Perfect. Yeah, it can't be just phishing simulations. So obviously the remediation training is well. And as I kind of mentioned before, the onboarding training courses, but there's still other ways to do it as well. There's obviously the platform, our platform includes far more education than just the onboarding. As I was mentioning earlier, kind of courses on staying safe at home, even with regards to remote working, and educating stuff about just being safe at home, even cyberbullying in the workplace. We even know, unfortunately, not that we would want them shopping online at work, but we know people shop online at home. So how to stay safe during those, expanding their knowledge and understanding their role that they play with regards to security. Even social media. Social media is everywhere nowadays. So understanding social media and the scams that are around there. And there's even at the executive level, there are courses available, a little bit more advanced courses from an educational piece. When people do return back to offices post COVID, you can take advantage and start putting up media signs around the office, giving those kindly reminders within the organization of things to do and keep in mind with regards to cybersecurity, and taking advantage of a tool that you can have predetermined workflows. So combining courses, educational courses, followed by phishing simulations that relate to that information, to kind of reinforce that learning within the organization as well. And also keeping on top of things through just e-newsletters or communication through end users. And even as we were explaining earlier, putting end users on the offense of you can use the tool to provide communication to end users. If your other technologies in place have stopped a real phishing incident from coming through, you can then take that, put it in a communication, letting end users know if they do happen to see an email that looks like this, then please make sure you report it to the appropriate people so they can act appropriately and take the proper steps.
Brilliant. And as the person who runs the program inside the organization, how could I demonstrate the effectiveness of the program, reporting, what is available from that perspective? Because obviously it's something that you've got to constantly reinvent, and you'd want to have access to show that employees actually engage with the platform, because that's the key, right?
Yes. One of the kind of key reports, there's a lot of reports in the tool, but in using the tool or a tool that has the ability to kind of see how we're doing from not only just a phishing simulation, but also from an educational perspective, kind of seeing that ROI. So for instance, from a simulation side of things, being able to tell over time how we're doing. So on this particular one, I have kind of 2 years kind of taken for an overall organization, but you can also dive deeper down into just a divisional level, see how the division within an organization is doing. But we can see over time how well we're doing with regards to our click rate, that it's going down or up. So do we need to adjust our training and information to our end users? And as I was explaining earlier, not only about knowing about the bad, but the good. So how well we're reporting over time. Are we getting better? Are we doing our remediation courses? Are we completing those? Or are we learning from our mistakes? And also knowing those who may be clicking more often. By knowing this, we can work around strategies with regards to assisting those who may need a little bit more assistance. But also kind of, as I was alluding to earlier, the different types of fishes, knowing which types of fishes we're clicking on, whether they're linked based, attachment based, or those credential stealing type fishes, knowing which ones we fall victim to more kind of helps us identify the areas in which we can help better train our end users with regards to phishing simulations and education courses. You can also see which divisions are doing better and seeing which divisions may need a little bit more assistance. But also, again, even being able to break it down by actual users of who our repeat clickers are and repeat reporters. Knowing those who are doing really well is a great way to find champions within the organization to assist those who may need a little bit more assistance. So it's not always coming from a management team or from a superior. It's more coming from a peer and helping them better understand things not to click on. And maybe they can help them with how they approach phishing simulations and what they do when they think if this email doesn't quite feel right. And then from an IT team's perspective, being able to see like the time to click, how fast people are clicking on things, knowing how fast we need to be able to respond, not only during time, but also over the week. So when are we at our well, for lack of better terms, when are we at our weakest? When does the IT team need to be at its strongest as our users are clicking on things on that particular day of the week? But also, when are we at our strongest? When are we at our best within the organization in terms of how fast we're reporting things? What days are reporting things? So in this particular instance, Monday is our strongest day, which is great considering after a weekend, coming back to work and kind of being on their toes. And then, as I was saying earlier, also knowing those emotions that are evoked in those phishing simulations and being able to respond to that, of knowing that maybe those that pique interest or maybe those that pique fear, like you must do this or else, that are causing the most clicks, then we can alter our education and our understanding with our employees on how to adapt to those types of simulations or real world events.
Brilliant. And then, David, could you maybe talk about some of the key metrics that an organization should look at when looking at tools, the system, and the security awareness program?
Yeah. With regards to, I guess, kind of selecting the right technology, things with regards to, actually, I'll get you to repeat the question because I think I almost went off on a tangent.
No problem. I was just asking the key metrics or items that organizations should look at when looking at tools, the system, with a security awareness program. You know?
Yeah, perfect. I guess I was heading in the right direction.
Yeah, you were.
So kind of key things, one of the biggest key things is making sure that the technology has the ability to adapt to the company's culture. So making sure that you have the ability to customize not only the onboarding experience, but also the education within the tool. Can you customize it to meet your needs? i.e., can you add your own content that you may already have and take advantage of the training that you already have in place? So again, not reinventing the wheel, but also even altering the content that's already there, but making it fit your company's culture, i.e. adding your logo, making it look like it belongs to you, a part of the team, if we're taking the team analogy or sports analogy. Being able to add in and send out your company policies with regards to, so people understand from the tool that what's important for the organization, the role that they play within it, but also being able to see that risk score, and by completing those things, their risk score go down and have a better understanding and a little bit of sense of ownership within the role that they play.
Yeah, brilliant. So on that point, what are some of the best practices in view of POPIA and GDPR, California Act, for employees to keep company information safe, seeing that, it's the onus is on the company to keep the customer information safe?
So with the organization, with regards to kind of keeping things safe, knowing kind of their role to play, and understanding that, for instance, using work email for work, and maybe not using our work email to sign up for the latest and greatest newsletter of whatever their favorite sport may be, or as I mentioned earlier, kind of password management is another big thing with regards to helping organizations stay. So taking advantage of password managers and the education around that for end users, knowing that the password 123 is not a great password, or just their birth dates and birth month, and taking advantage of password managers, so they're not having to worry about saving another password, or taking advantage of single sign-on, if that's a multi-factor authentication, taking advantage of things like that to keep information safe, and keeping devices up to date, and things of that nature, with regards to, can be a big assist to the IT team.
Excellent. And in terms of I know not all programs always work. What are the things to watch out for? What are the pitfalls from your experience of launching multiple training programs for lots of different corporates? What can the audience learn from our experience in deploying multiple programs across the world?
Yeah, so with regards to an organization, kind of making sure that a program can be as successful as it can be, is making sure that we have support from the leadership team and being involved with cybersecurity, as the more the senior leadership team cares, the entire leadership team cares about cybersecurity, the more the entire organization becomes a part of the culture. And employees, as I was saying earlier, kind of that little competition that another organization plays of like beat the CEO in terms of score, knowing that even the CEOs and being involved with the efforts in cybersecurity with regards to awareness, keeping everyone together, being able to leverage the right metrics for your organization, with regards to evaluating our people who fell victim to phishing simulations, how, kind of speaking to that phishing simulation report, their time to report, how fast we're falling victim to phishing simulations, so we can understand what we need to do from an education perspective, as well as those emotions that are being evoked from our end users with regards which types of phishes are causing the most effect. And then another thing is, as we've kind of been speaking to this whole time, is making sure that, I guess I'll just kind of hit it home again, is making sure that you're able to adapt the program to your company's culture and meets the needs within that culture, to get that buy-in from the entire organization, from top to bottom, and knowing that our people can be our best line of defense, and it's not just the IT team's role.
Great. There's a few questions here from the audience. The first one is, in the absence of having an encrypted or password protected document, can an employer share this document with an employee or ex-employee via email, work or personal, or what measure needs to be in place to adhere to POPIA requirements? So Ridwan, I thought that maybe you could answer that particular question, if that's okay.
Yeah, happy to do that. So I think the one thing we must realize of legislation like POPIA, it's not meant to stop us from doing day-to-day business-related tasks. So the task of sending an email, nothing in POPIA says that you can't send an email. The question comes around, what is the content of this email? If we are dealing with an employee, is the content being shared, number one, personal information? Number two, is it linked to a specified purpose for which that information, personal information was collected in the first place, or linked to that purpose? So can there be some form of link? If it's not linked to that purpose, or if the information is being shared because the recipient employee wishes to engage in what the Act refers to as further processing, then an interrogation of the Act needs to take place. If you are dealing with an ex-employee, you're now dealing with somebody external to your organization. So again, the question comes, why am I sharing this information with this specific person? Is there a need to share that person? As to then, suppose you do establish that the person has the right to receive that information for whatever purpose, it then comes to the sensitivity of that information. So if you are an NGO, for example, sharing details of very sensitive details of, say, child abuse information with an employee or former employee, obviously you're going to want to ensure that your systems generically are secure enough, but you may want to take that extra prudent measure of actually password protecting or encrypting that document. Again, the Act is not prescriptive in this regard. POPIA doesn't place any specific requirements as to specific types of technologies you should be using and the like. So have regard to, number one, can you share that information? If once you have established that right, you can share that information. The security within, first of all, your email systems should be secure enough with all of the usual protocols in place, so having antivirus software and the like. But beyond that, if you feel that the information is of such a sensitive nature, then you may wish to adopt something further, some further mechanism like encryption or something.
Brilliant. There's another question here, Ridwan, that maybe you want to handle as well. It says, if a data subject requests the deletion of personal information, but applicable law requires the responsible party to retain this information for X number of years, what is the next step?
So then you would have to comply with the applicable law. And this is a very common question which we get. What we suggest all organizations adopt is a data retention policy. And your data retention policy should be crafted in such a way that it actually tells you under specific pieces of legislation, how long do you need to retain records for? So for example, under the Companies Act, it will tell you need to retain records for 7 years. Under employment legislation, you may need to retain personal information for 5 years or 3 years or whatever the case may be. So having a data retention policy in place would be a good guideline and as to how long you should, number one, be keeping information for, and conversely, how frequently you should be deleting that information. But to summarize the answer to this, if the Act or even Act prescribes that you keep information for a specified period of time, then you should be keeping that information for a specified period of time.
Great. And then there's a question here. Do you have a view on POPIA versus the Cybercrimes Act, how these two acts might be contradicting?
We still, without going into too much detail around the Cybercrimes Act, we haven't yet, I haven't done a full study of the Act in itself. I do apologize for that. I've had COVID for the past month or so, but it is something which we are putting together a further webinar on the Cybercrimes Act. And one of the things which we will be addressing is this interplay between POPIA and the Cybercrimes Act. So POPIA, for example, speaks about responsible parties taking steps to ensure or prevent unauthorized access to information, whereas the Cybercrimes Act on the other hand actually states that if there is unauthorized access, that actually amounts to a crime. So the overlap between the two, the items of contradiction between the two and similarities between the two, we're still busy addressing and unpacking that.
I think, Ridwan, maybe to add to that, where there is perhaps an extended scope of obligations, not so much a difference, is if you are an internet service provider, for example, or one of the categories, or a financial institution, which are the two types of organizations that are recognized under the Cybercrimes Act. And what's important there is that POPIA, remember on POPIA on the one hand, if you have a data breach, you have to report it. If you're a responsible party, it doesn't matter what type of organization you are. Cybercrimes creates a mandatory breach, cybercrime reporting obligation within 72 hours for internet service provider companies as well as financial institutions to police. So say, for example, you have a hack or a ransomware attack. Not only are you possibly going to need to report that under POPIA because it may trigger your personal information issues, but you also then have to report it to the police under the Cybercrimes Act. So, and then preserve the evidence and do those sorts of things. So I think it's going to create this nuance where it doubles up for some people their reporting obligations in any incident.
Great. And then there's a question here for David. David, your platform demonstrated managing risk. Can this be set to manage risk per division or business? And can you report per division or business?
Yes. Can everybody see my screen? Perfect. So yeah, within the platform, with regards to setting it up, you can add in all your divisions, with regards or multiple businesses or domains within the organization. If you have several companies, you can break this down and basically be able to report not only just the level of individual risk, but the organizational risk, and see how you compare to the rest of the organization itself, as well as all of the entire customer base of Boseron. So you can kind of see how you're doing overall as well. Being able to, and then obviously this is just this particular report that I'm on right now, just to kind of show that you can see the report by divisional level, but you can do this.
Sorry, David, your screen isn't actually up.
Oh,
but it's fine. Talk us. We've got a minute or two left, so we'll
no problem.
Wrap it up with.
I must have double clicked on something. My apologies. But basically, you do have the ability to populate by division or by organization and see how well you're doing over time with regards to delta difference, and as well as with regards to kind of a quick 30-day snapshot as well.
Great. I think, as Nicole alluded, we're about to run out of time and there were a lot more questions. Maybe we could address those in writing post the webinar, and we'll come back to you, the various panelists. I wanted to apologize for the little technology glitch that I had. See, David's had one as well. So we're having a lot of fun. Murphy's Law, everything that could go wrong and went wrong. So apologies for that. But I really enjoyed the discussion today, and I'll hand back to Nicole to kind of wrap up.
Thanks. And thanks very much to both you, Yaron and David, for joining us. It certainly was much more exciting than listening to lawyers for a change, and seeing how practically all these things can dovetail together. And just going back to what Ridwan said earlier, remember that POPIA isn't a technology intensive act. It doesn't prescribe to us what we have to do in terms of looking after information. But remember, it tells us we must look after information. So managing your employees and creating awareness and putting in risk mitigation prevention strategies is much better than trying to fix a problem after the fact. And certainly, Ridwan, you could probably agree, but with the amount of breaches that we've seen personally, invariably very few organizations actually have robust or any incident response plans in place. And it's such a fundamental step. Do you agree, Ridwan?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think having your incident response plan in place is number one. And then regularly testing it, like almost like on a fire drill basis, that's equally as important, because we've seen some organizations have a policy in place, have it in writing, and then an incident happens and everybody literally is running around like headless chickens, not knowing what to do. So operationalizing your policy, testing it almost like on a fire drill basis, running things like simulated phishing attacks, etc., using good technology, as was presented today. All of those are important, and all of those are quite important.
Perfect. Thanks everyone again for joining us, and please stay safe, and we hope that you'll join us next time we have one of these. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.